Hey, Michael.
Hi, Nail.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you crystal clear. In fact, I probably will. I'll go get my headphones so I can hear. How is my audio? Is it clear?
It's super clear, super nice, and crispy.
That's good. It's a microphone right here.
Yeah. So we're gonna start in the next 12 minutes, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah. Can you tell me how do you typically facilitate a an ACE that is virtual like this?
Is this the organizing in time and promoting it really to the community? Nothing much, and
Okay.
ensuring that the brand collateral goes out to the community. But most of the time is the request that I get from the community on what they're interested in.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So the room is almost you know, full. So within 10 minutes or so, it should be good
Okay.
for that.
Is there a big screen in that room, or will people be watching from their laptops?
Yes, there's a screen. Let me show you so that you
Okay.
see it.
I'm going to share my screen too, so you can tell me if the how it shows up. Um, are you able to see my presentation deck?
There is your presentation.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, that's you. You can see it, right?
Um, one moment. Oh,
Should be on
perfect.
that
Okay.
side. Yeah.
I'll try to
So
make my text as big as possible. Let me see how
yeah.
this would look. And honestly, it's so even if people can't follow equally, I'll provide links to all of the things that I'm working on so that they can take a look at them on their own. But
Perfect.
from a text size perspective, Michael, is this legible?
Is it? But you guys can come closer so that yeah. For me,
It,
from here, it's legible, but they're saying you can increase.
I can. Okay, got it.
Is that good now?
Okay. Okay.
Huh? Is it perfect?
E- yeah. Even if they're not able to see it, I mean, I'll be very honest with you. Sometime I'm going to try to slow down my speech too, because typically I speak very quickly. But in terms of the text size, yeah, some of this might be hard to track because it's going to be virtual and on a screen. But everything that I do here, I'll make sure that I'll provide links to everybody so that they can play around with these things themselves. So there is one downside to my presentation setup here is that for some of this, I won't be able to see the camera like or so if anyone's trying to get my attention visually or in the chat, I won't be able to see it for maybe half of the presentation because of my screen configuration. Um, but you're welcome to interrupt me if there's any particular question that somebody has. You just speak up and I'll stop what I'm doing.
Right. That sounds good.
Yep. Michael, when the event starts in 7 minutes, do you want me to go right into it, or are you going to have some opening words for everyone?
Sorry, I'll have some opening words, but basically just introducing you. So yeah.
Okay. We did have somebody joining earlier from Jordan, Kasim. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it
So
Enoch?
I think that yes, I think that when we co-hosted the event, and I think when you reopened the RSVPs, we had a few more people join RSVP.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
I'm
interesting.
gonna shut off my camera and my mic. I'll be back in about 3 minutes.
Okay. See you. Yeah, so just to welcome you in today's session, where we'll have our guest speaker from Atlassian, Neil Mansila, joining us all the way from Australia, and a couple of other developers across the world to explore Forge and its capability in building at scale. Neil Mansila is a developer advocate at Atlassian, and his title is Principal Developer Advocate, supporting the global ecosystem of developers and partners that will build apps on the Atlassian platform. And before finding his passion for developer relations and partnerships, Neil worked as a software engineer across several industries, including e-commerce, real estate, and healthcare. Give a lot of applause for Neil. The floor is all yours, Neil.
Awesome. Thanks for the introduction. That's very kind, and thanks for the applause. All right, let me start sharing my screen. I'm probably gonna turn down my audio so that we don't get feedback. Okay. All right, one moment.
Let me actually mute on this side.
Okay, Michael, does that look okay? Can you see that screen? All right.
Yes.
So, my name is Neil. I'm a developer advocate at Atlassian, like Michael said. Thanks for the intro. I've been with Atlassian for about 7 years, and as a dev advocate, my job is to advocate on behalf of all developers that are building things on top of the Atlassian platform, whether they're partners, customers, users, admins, whoever is building something. My job is to kind of support them and advocate on their behalf. Today, we're going to learn about Forge, Atlassian's cloud app development platform. So if you've ever had an idea on how you can improve how you work in Jira or Confluence, or you wish there was an app to do something like, there was an app for that, I wish there was a way to maybe integrate data from some other system, well, this session is for you. Forge makes building apps a lot easier, even for beginners. And today, you're going to learn what Forge is. I'll cover some fundamental concepts of how Forge works. And then I'm going to get hands-on and do some live coding just to show you how easy it is, even if you're a beginner. Now, that being said, obviously I'm virtual. I'm actually based in the United States. A lot of my colleagues are based in Sydney. But as I'm going through this, if anything, if maybe the text is too small or you feel like I'm going too fast, it's okay. I'm going to provide links to the repositories and some parts of the documentation that'll help you to kind of do this on your own later. All right, cool. So here's our agenda. I'm going to start with a high-level overview and some key concepts of Forge, and I'm going to give you some tips on how you can quickly get things set up on your own laptop or dev environment, as we call it. I'm going to build our first Forge app together, and I'm going to review some key parts of the documentation that I think that all people should be aware of. And if you are embarking on building a Forge app, you're going to be spending quite a bit of time in the documentation. I'm going to show some sample Forge apps that exist in our docs and actually go through a few of them to kind of, again, demonstrate how easy it is to take an existing app and kind of make it your own and learn that way. And then maybe take a little break, and then we'll get into building a dashboard gadget with Forge. All right. So let's start with this. What is Forge? So Forge is Atlassian's server development platform, building, running secure, reliable, and scalable apps that extend the functionality of Atlassian cloud products. And Forge is very different from our previous generation of development platforms, from P2 on-prem, like for building server and data center apps, or even it's very different even from Connect, which is our cloud app development platform, because Forge, it handles a lot of the heavy lifting for you. A lot of the things like around security or scalability and reliability, etc. But first, let's think about what kind of apps can you build with Forge? Well, I'll just say you can it's practically anything that you can dream up. For now, I'm going to speak more broadly about the types of apps in terms of their capabilities. So the first type of app is what I call a UI-based app. With Forge, extending, for example, Jira or Confluence's product UI is relatively easy. For example, if you want to build an app that enhances Jira's UI by adding new pages or sections or just some new information, let's say in Jira's issue view, this is what I refer to as a UI-based app, an app that a user interacts with within the product. I'm not sure if any of you have any experience like building scripts or maybe even using automation. Well, this is another type of use case for Forge. Forge is great for performing complex automations. A Forge app can perform tasks in the background after being triggered by a product event, like a value changing on an issue or on a Confluence page. You can also schedule tasks in a Forge app to be executed on a set time interval. So if you've ever had an idea about building an app that reacts to something that happens to a Jira issue, a new issue is created, an issue is updated, a Confluence page is created, a comment is left, etc. You can build a Forge app that responds to that, and it operates completely in the background. So a little bit of a contrast between like a back-end utility and a UI-based app. You can also build integrations with Forge. For example, if you wanted to build a bridge or a pipeline between Jira and an external product or platform that your company uses, you can do that with Forge. Your Forge app can call APIs to an external system, let's say like a CRM or ERP, or maybe an external build deploy platform, for example. That's quite popular. You can even set up a Forge app to receive API calls from authorized systems. So integrations are bidirectional, right? So if you wanted, again, an app that would make a call out to a system or the system had to call back in, you can do that with Forge. In fact, some of the most popular apps on the Atlassian marketplace are integrations. And if you're a Jira admin, workflow validators are something that very well. With Forge, you can build an app that creates custom validations in your team's Jira workflows. For example, if you have a Kanban board and you'd like to enforce strict work in progress limits, today, if you set a work in progress limit on a column and say, I only want, 5 issues in there, it doesn't really restrict it. It just kind of turns the column red. Well, here you can build a Forge app validator that will restrict an issue from being transitioned to work in progress when a certain limit is reached. And you can also build post functions and conditions that are powered by Forge. And what I mean by powered by Forge is that those rules and conditions are programmatic. You do that in Node.js or in a JavaScript function. So you have that power of logic to have really complex validators, post functions, and conditions. And also when working in Jira, there are times when your team might need its own bespoke or custom field type or custom field, a field with functionality that's not part of the out-of-the-box or off-the-shelf offering. With Forge, you can build a field type with your own defined behavior. So these behaviors are defined logic and code. So let's just maybe take a step back and think, well, who uses Forge? So developers, after all, Forge is an app development platform. So of course, professional software developers use Forge, whether they're in-house or they're, partners. Admins and power users use Forge to build apps to be used within their organizations. In fact, and end users as well. Forge was built to be easy to get started, like out of the gate. So we're seeing that end users are starting to look at Forge to see how they can improve how they work within the products. In fact, when we hold developer training sessions at the team conferences, like we held one at Team 24 in Vegas, as well as in Barcelona at the Atlassian event, nearly everybody that registered for those were admins. Like these were not professional software developers. They have some technical chops, but they were really interested in seeing how Forge could help them kind of skill up to be better admins. And set of course that uses Forge are partners, both solution partners and marketplace partners. In fact, more marketplace apps are being built on Forge than ever before. And last but not least is Atlassian team members themselves. There are thousands of Forge apps that are built and used internally by Atlassian employees. And that's a testament to like having a really good platform when the company adopts it. As an example, internally we had the Connect, externally we had the Connect framework to build cloud apps. And that was probably not nearly as used and adopted internally like Forge has been. Like people are using Forge on a daily basis internally. So in addition to being able to build Forge apps for Jira and Confluence Cloud, Forge apps can also be built for Bitbucket, Jira Service Management, Compass, and now even Rovo. So I'm always surprised. I always think everybody knows what the Atlassian Marketplace is, but the Atlassian Marketplace is essentially the app store for apps that you can install on your Atlassian. And here you can find really great examples of essential power tools that are great for customers. Some with fantastic UIs, back-end automations and integrations. With more and more of them are being built on Forge. You probably use apps if you're a Jira or Confluence user, and you may not even realize that they're apps. But there are more than 6,000 apps in the Atlassian Marketplace. And while we don't know the exact number, we estimate that there are tens of thousands of in-house custom apps that are built and used by our customers. So apps don't have to be built just to be published on the marketplace. In fact, the majority of apps that are built are just built for in-house use. But when it comes to marketplace itself, there's been over $4 billion in lifetime sales on the Atlassian Marketplace, and that's how popular apps are. So in the event that you were ever thinking that maybe this little app that I built, or you had an idea for an app, and you might want to, go from side hustle to a real business, it's a real business opportunity if you've ever considered wanting to become a software tech entrepreneur. So why use Forge? Like why build things with this platform and framework? First, apps that you build on Forge are Atlassian hosted, and that means that you don't need to provision servers or manage infrastructure because Atlassian does that for you. Earlier, I said that Atlassian handles some of a lot of the heavy lifting. Well, if you're developed and hosted cloud app, you know that that's a heavy lift, right? The Forge development platform is available to all Atlassian cloud customers. Even if you're on the free tier, you can build apps with Forge. Next, in terms of security, Forge apps leverage a platform that adheres to security best practices. Atlassian provides security measures, including managed authentication, sandboxed functions, isolated runtime environments. In short, your app's data and the customer's data is very safe. Again, about the heavy lifting phrase that I'm using. App data is not only isolated from other apps running on, let's say, your Jira or Confluence Cloud instance, but customer data is also isolated. So for instance, if you're an app that gets installed across multiple Jira instances, like an app on the marketplace, for example, Forge automatically handles the data isolation between those instances. So data cannot be leaked from one installation into another. And you probably are thinking, well, of course, that should not happen ever. But the software architecture I'm describing is called multi-tenancy. And if you've ever built a SaaS web-based app, you know that multi-tenancy is absolutely vital. And you also know that properly implementing multi-tenancy is not trivial. But with Forge, it's intrinsic, it's built in. Another benefit to building with Forge is its extensible UI capabilities. This means, for example, you can add signs and pages to a Jira Cloud instance. You can use pre-built components for faster app and UI development with something that we call UI kit, which we're going to dive into. If you have more freedom to design your own design and control your UI, Forge also affords you the ability to do that with something called custom UI. And in fact, there's even a hybrid between them. So you can kind of combine a custom UI with your own JavaScript style assets and still utilize UIKit. If UI is of particular interest to you, in the demos, I'm going to show you how easy it is to extend Jira's issue view. Okay, so now we have a general idea of what Forge is, who uses it, some of its benefits as an app development platform. Let's talk about some of the key concepts. They're going to help us as we kind of get ready to start building our first Forge app. And again, if you're not a developer, don't worry. We have it might seem like I'm going a little fast, but like I said, all of the resources are online that you can kind of do this at your own pace. So the first thing I'm going to talk about, the first concept here, is the CLI, or the command line interface. This is a tool that you'll need to work with Forge apps. You're going to use the Forge CLI to do things like create new apps, deploy them to the cloud. Like, let's say you made some code changes, you need to deploy them. And then you need to use the Forge CLI to install them on your instance. The install process, like when you go to the marketplace and you download or buy an app, it's the equivalent of using the CLI in Forge install command. If you've already installed the Forge CLI, then you already know that it just takes a couple of minutes to kind of, to install the Forge CLI. The CLI works the same across multiple platforms, whether you're on PC, Windows, Mac, or Linux. So as we go through this session, you'll get a little bit more familiar with the CLI commands and what they do, because I'm going to do some live demonstration coding. And the next key concept here is this thing called the manifest. It's just this all that's inside of every Forge app. And this manifest is used to define your Forge app and how it behaves. It's a YAML file, YAML, which might be familiar to some of you because it's often used in configuration files. The manifest just outlines the different modules, functions, and resources that your app will use to extend the product functionalities, right? To extend Jira, to extend Confluence. It'll, depending on the module could be something that is very UI focused. Like, it's going to be, in this example, there's this Jira issue panel, and that actually will add like a little panel to the Jira issue view. And I guess to use an analogy, like cooking, let's say that we're making a dish like fried rice. That finished dish would be your Forge app. In that sense, or this analogy, the manifest is like the recipe. It outlines the ingredients and the directions for preparing that dish of fried rice. So as we go through the session, the manifest, it's going to become more clear as to what its role is. And the last thing I'll talk about are modules. And the Forge platform exposes product extension points in the form of modules. So in a nutshell, modules describe how the Forge app interacts with the products. So following that cooking analogy, if the manifest file is the recipe, then modules are like a combination of the ingredients list and the step directions for handling those ingredients. For example, if I wanted to add an issue panel to the issue view, you just need to add the corresponding here, the Jira issue panel. And there are a lot of different modules and a variety of module types, which means that you can build apps that can do just about anything. I'm going to cover a few other modules as we go through this presentation. So let's just take maybe like a 30,000-foot view, because earlier I said that Forge is a serverless app development platform. Well, let's take a look at the basic architecture and a bit of the flow behind like making, deploying, and installing a Forge app. So from your local development environment or your computer or PC, you're going to interact with the Forge CLI. And by entering in some Forge CLI commands, this interacts with Atlassian's cloud. And like when you do things like you create a Forge app. So when you've built your app or made some improvements to it, You're going to deploy it into the cloud, also using the Forge CLI. And then your app gets stored in the Atlassian cloud in something that's called the Forge app environment. And that's complete with your app source code, along with the other files that make up your app. But when your app is actually installed on a Jira instance, and a user's, let's say they're on a page and your app is on it, the Forge runtime will fetch your code from the app environment, and it'll execute. It'll run it. And then your app will render within the Jira UI in this example. Okay, that was Forge at a very high level. Now that you've learned about some of the key concepts, let's see them in action. And what we're going to do is build our own Hello World app. So what do we need to get started building a Forge app? First, we need an Atlassian account, and you got to create your own free developer sandbox instance. Even if you have admin access to your company's instances, please do not use them for app development and testing. You can get a free instance that includes a fully functional set of our cloud products, including Jira, Jira Service Management, and Confluence. There's just some limits to it, like 5 users maximum for Jira and Confluence. There's 1 agent that you can have for JSM, but it's a fully functional suite of your own personal sandbox. And it's kind of fun having your own if you don't have one already, because you can feel good knowing that you're not going to mess up any of your company's projects or Confluence spaces, etc. The next thing you'll need is Node.js. And again, you'll install this on your local computer. Node.js, free open source JavaScript runtime environment. And I'm not sure if I mentioned this yet, but Forge apps are built using JavaScript or TypeScript. And once you have Node.js installed, you'll have to install the Forge CLI. Again, just takes a couple of minutes. Actually, it's very fast. And although it's not required, I highly recommend using a code editor like Visual Studio Code. It's free, by the way. It just makes it a lot easier when you're building an app, because it does things like syntax highlighting, because it understands JavaScript syntax, makes it easier to read. And there's just a bunch of cool extensions to, like AI-powered coding assistance, which is kind of funny, because in 2024, I'm like, hey, there's this extension for doing AI-powered coding. That's just going to be something that is going to be integrated into every editor going forward. And I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code in my demos. So to kind of zoom in on each of those steps, I'll go really quick. You're going to want your own free developer instance, and you'll just go to this URL and grab one. You just log in with your Atlassian ID and just give it a unique host name, right? Like I have this one here, 123. And that's going to be the URL that you'll use to access your dev instance, like in your browser. And that's also the URL that you'll use to install apps. Again, dev instance is fully functional of a suite of the Atlassian cloud products. So by the way, if you're thinking like, hey, I actually was wanting to build an app for Bitbucket or Compass, you can learn about how to do that, because you don't really get, you just have to create like a Bitbucket workspace, or add Compass to your dev instance once you have one spun up, and that the instructions are in the documentation. But once you have your developer instance set up, the next thing you'll need, as I mentioned, is Node.js and the Forge CLI. Really quick instructions on this URL, which basically just sends you to the developer documentation and this page. You're going to find directions on how, like step-by-step, how to install Node.js on Linux, Windows, or Mac. And you'll also have instructions on how to install the Forge CLI. And that is just a couple commands once you have Node.js installed. And once you have your dev instance, once you have Node.js, once you have the CLI installed, once that's all done, you'll be ready to start building your app. And if you if you have it done, awesome. If you don't, encourage you that maybe right after this session, so it's fresh in your mind. Again, I'll provide these URLs. Just get it done so you can actually start messing around with this stuff. Okay, so I do my live demo in a moment. We're going to be building a very simple app from scratch in just simple steps. The very first step is this command from the command line interface, Forge create. And this command is going to prompt us with a few questions like the name of our app, the category of our app we're building, which product we're building it for, like Jira or Confluence. And by the way, every app that is created, even the most killer and amazing apps on the Atlassian marketplace, if it was a Forge app, it started with Forge Create. So this is not like a tool just for beginners. This is how all Forge apps are born. Once we do this Forge Create command, it's going to download a template of an app and place it into a brand new folder on our local machine. Okay, now when that app is created on our local machine, it's time to deploy it. So that's the second step. And we just run another command, Forge deploy, and it's going to do some checking to make sure that there's no errors and everything looks good. If everything looks good, it's just going to bundle up all of our code and upload it into the cloud. Now, at this state, it is not installed on our dev instance yet. It's just kind of ready to be run. So the third and final is this Forge install. And this will prompt us, which product are we installing our app on? Like Jira or Confluence, it's going to ask us for the name of our instance, and we're going to type in the personal sandbox instance that we created. And so I've been talking a lot about how easy it is. I think it's just time to do a live presentation. Here we go. Wish me luck. Let me open up a terminal. A moment. Okay. I'll make my fonts bigger here. That text size okay, everybody? Okay. All right. So let's do Forge create, first command. Call it hello, Kenya. I'm going to choose UI kit. Scroll down to Jira, and I'll just do Jira issue panel. So this is the part where it's creating the app by downloading a template from the cloud, and it's going to register the app, which means that when I go to it's creating an app that I own. I'm logged in. When you go through the instructions on installing the Forge CLI, there's also a couple steps to log in to the Forge CLI. So I'm logged in as a user right now. So it's creating an app, and it takes just give it another 30 seconds or so. And once it downloads the template, I will open it up in an editor, and we can take a look and see what's inside. This is the downside of live demos, is waiting. On a video, I could just cut right through this. All right, come on, let's go. Just out of curiosity, and I cannot see you right now, but maybe Michael, you can, or someone can yell out a number. How many in the room have created a Forge app already? Anyone? All right. Okay, let's see what it did. It says your app is ready to work on, deploy and install.
Just one person made.
I'm sorry, Michael?
One person has created the app.
Oh, good, because I was hoping that it would only be one or none, because if everybody has done this already, then this would not be very fun. Okay, so I'm going to follow the directions here. It says change into the directory Hello Kenya. I'm going to go in there, and if I list all the files, this is what it looks like. There's just a few files in here. So I mentioned Visual Studio Code. I'm going to open up this one of these days. There it is. I'm going to open this up in here, and let me blow this up and make this bigger. Okay, So I mentioned the Forge CLI, which we've seen. Then I mentioned the manifest. And here's our manifest. We have using this Jira issue panel module. Again, this is like the recipe for our app. And this might look like gibberish to you. That's okay. But really, this is kind of the map of how our app works. It is going to use the issue panel, and it's mapped to some code in here. I don't know. I'm sure if you've ever built an app before, or you learned a new language, the first thing you always have your app do is just print the words "Hello World." So that really, this is the guts of the app, right? It's just going to print this little phrase "Hello World." Let's see it in action. I'm going to do the terminal here, and so I did the Forge create. The second was Forge deploy. So this is the one where it'll do some error checking. It's going to bundle up or package up this entire app, like all of this code, and going to bail like that. One moment. Let's try that again. This is the lovely part of live demos. So ideally, what should be happening is it's going inside that thing I called the Forge app, and the app environment. So this would be equivalent to, let's say, creating an app and uploading it to Heroic AWS, right? It's ready to be run. So now it's deployed. One last command, and that is Forge install. So this is equivalent of going to the marketplace and an app, but we're doing it using the Forge CLI. So I'm going to choose Jira and Mansilla.Atlassian.net. This test instance. Do I want to continue? Yes. It says your app in the dev environment is now installed here. Let's take a look and see what that looks like. And I'll make this bigger in a second. Okay, so I'm on my Jira instance. We'll go into an issue. Let's make it bigger. All right, so where is our app? If I go to apps, I should see Hello Kenya. And it is this right here. This is an issue panel. And there's our hello world right there. Now, if I were to go into the editor, and let's say I want to change to say hello Kenya from Forge. And let's say I save that, file save. There is a cool thing you can do that I haven't talked about yet, and it's called Forge Tunnel. And this allows you to quickly make changes to your JavaScript code, and you don't have to go through the painful deploy process, because that can be, if you want to iterate quickly, you want to make some quick changes just to see how they look, you can use this thing called the tunnel. And every time I make changes, the tunnel will reload. But the beautiful part of the tunnel is this. Every time my app renders here, instead of pulling it from the Forge app environment in the cloud, it's going to redirect or intercept this app and run it from my. Okay, so watch this. If I were to reload this page, to reload this issue view, it should, you'll see hit the terminal here. It says serving file index.html. And I might have some kind of, I apologize that this is kind of slow. Let's try this again. By the way, this never happens. Or I really should say, this always happens. I'm going to, instead of using the tunnel, because for whatever reason I'm having problems, I'm going to deploy those changes. And once they're deployed, we should see our changes reflected on our app here. I've done this demo at least 500 times. And it usually doesn't fail at this point, which is just comical. But let's wait for this to deploy. Again, from let me see if I can pull up my presentation. From a architectural standpoint, what's happening is, let's see, we did, okay, there. And so when we deployed it, it went into the Forge app environment, right? And I installed it as well. Now I'm making changes. So I'm running that Forge deploy. So the app as it lives in the Forge app environment is being updated, and that the Forge runtime should pick up my new code. So this thing says that changes have been deployed. So come on, reload. Ah, typo. That's my problem. I had an extra character in there, and the thing was bailing. Okay, let's try this again. Hello, Kenya from Forge, and hopefully this will pick it up. Reload. Ah, there it is. So back to what I was actually really excited to show you was this thing called the tunnel. And again, it's intercepting all invocations of this Forge app that we just built. And it's immediately doing it and showing it here. So watch this. If I were to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I save this. It automatically rebundled the code. Now it's waiting. And look at that. It's instantaneous. Just to show you. Ready? I'll shrink this. Tunnel is extremely. 5 from the tunnel. Save. The tunnel will reload. And then sometimes, yep, I didn't even have to refresh it. It automatically picked up my changes. Now, if I were to just quit my tunnel, hit Control C, it'll revert back to the one that is in the, and it won't be the thing from my local environment here. So I know that this probably wasn't the most like mind-blowing kind of app, but it just kind of really shows you how quickly it is to get started of going from 0 to your very first app within this issue view. And you can make it do, obviously, far more complex things inside this code. And we're going to do a few more interesting things on the following exercises. Okay, one moment. Okay. So can you really, I mean, look how easy this is. If you built an app in the cloud or even on-prem, you know that it's not trivial to actually get, to create an app, to stage it up onto, to prop it up onto a hosting provider, to get it installed. Like if I didn't have any of those internet connectivity issues, we could have done it in less than 5 minutes. So, I mean, we created it, we deployed it, we installed it, and we tested it, right? And you could do that in 5-10 minutes. Now, I want to introduce you to the developer documentation. It's a wonderful site that's packed with guides, tutorials, reference docs, and things that are absolutely essential to helping you learn how to build like even real powerful and useful apps. And you're going to find the docs at developer.atlassian.com. I'm going to head over to a browser window right now and point out some essential areas that can help you as you're getting started. So let's see. All right. So since we are, let me make this fit. All right. Since we're building a Forge app, there's a lot of docs, by the way, just to be very clear. If you click on this tab up top, you'll see that there's REST API docs for every product. It goes deep, right? I think a great place to start is just by clicking on this button here, Build Forge App. And on it, you'll have all the introductory content, which will explain like, well, not really easy, but an idea like architectural diagram of kind of how Forge works, right? Reasons why you should build with Forge. And let's go up here to reference. And modules, and I'm kind of jumping here, but I want to show you that, like, the thing that we used issue panel module. And here, like, here, look at the documentation. It shows you, let me make this bigger. It shows you, tells you what it does, and it gives you an example of how it works, and then it even gives you manifest examples as well. Now, that being said, you can also use the Forge CLI to create an app. There's a whole bunch of templates. I chose the issue panel explicitly, but you can choose any of them, and it will create a manifest that just works for you. I'm going to do it a couple more times in other exercises, and you'll see. But let's say, for instance, I wanted to build an app that was in a different section of Jira. Let's say issue activity. Oh, here's one. So you can, it'll add an item to this panel, the activity panel here. So you can use this in Jira Work Management, Jira Software, JSM, right? And it works in the new issue view, but not in the old issue view. Because you can see, like, if I were to just to go to the CLI and choose any one of these template examples, it'll create like a little Hello World app that will demonstrate how easy it is to kind of just put text or put anything into a different part of the product, right? Now, if any of you do have scripting experience, then you probably have used like the REST APIs for Jira, and those are also on developer.atlassian.com. You just go to the Jira Cloud Platform. Now, what I'm looking at here are the reference docs for the REST API for Jira. And if you're not familiar with this, so API stands for Programming Interface. And if you, almost nearly anything that you can do within the product, you can do within the API as well. So I'm just going to go over here to V2. Let's say, for instance, I wanted to create an issue from my Forge app. Let's just go to issues right here. And so this is what's called the issues resource. And these are all of the methods. So let's say I wanted to create an issue. This documentation will tell you exactly like what this API method is for. What's even cooler is that on the right-hand side, it shows you how to do it, right? So using Forge, you can do a whole lot of copying and pasting. So I could like probably copy all of this and paste it into my app. There are some caveats to this, by the way, because some of these examples might have references to custom fields that don't exist on your instance. So you might want to strip some of these examples down. But whether whether you're building, you just wanted to make an API call in curl, or whether you wanted to do this in just raw Node.js. But with Forge, this is great. Like, this tells you, oh, just let's copy this and go back into our code and paste it in here. Like that's one thing you can do. And then just copy this stuff and paste it, and all of a sudden you're creating issues. Slightly, maybe a little bit oversimplifying it, because like I said, there's sometimes some of the examples here might not work because these some of this metadata might not jive with your instance. But let's say, for instance, I just wanted to do a get issue. This was a lot easier to do. So get issue. Here, it gives you an example of how to make a get issue call. And so the meat of this one here is this line, where it just says, hey, by the way, back to the how Forge makes the heavy list, does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. This is how easy it is to make an API call. I just say api.asUser request Jira, and then give it this path to the API and give it an issue key. Didn't have to deal with API keys, right? I'm making the call as the user that's logged in, that's using my app, let's say within my issue panel. You can also make an API call as the app. So if you're doing more of a back-end automation and there is no user context, like no one's really using your your app within Jira at the moment, it's like reacting to something, you can make the call as an app. But again, back to the heavy lifting, there's no API keys or secrets to handle. The authentication is handled for you, right? And then again, the examples of how to like, what does the response look like? And when you copy and paste this stuff, it's magical. Like it makes it so easy to build something. So back to the documentation. I'm gonna go. As I mentioned, there's a lot, but don't get overwhelmed if this is your first time. So if you're a heavy Confluence user, you'll find there's also Confluence REST APIs. So if I wanted to get, let's go just to the REST API. If I wanted to maybe pull down like, comments, when I get content comments, or if I wanted to create new comments, if I wanted to, look at all the spaces that are on my instance, create spaces even. So there's API methods to create data, modify data, read data. You just have to just take a look at some of these examples. And in fact, there's some sample apps that kind of dive deeper into these things, and we're going to pull from a few of those as well. Okay, 1 second. So I mentioned that at the very top, in every section, there's this little tab called reference. And in there, you'll find, so I'm not sure if you know this terminology, but when we say reference documentation, it means like it's very technical and it's everything. So if you wanted to see what all the modules that are available, just go to reference at the top and then modules, and you'll find them all with great descriptions, some examples. Some describe better than others, to be honest. But then it's a great place to kind of just cover like what's possible, right? I had mentioned this thing like that you can build automations. Well, as an example, let's just go back to the Forge documentation.
We still can't hear you.
Let's see, reference, modules, and common. So there are modules that are product specific, like the Jira issue panel is only for Jira Forge apps. Well, there's also these common modules. So one common module is the trigger. And this is the trigger module that it says that it'll invoke a function or a call in your code based on a product event. So what does that mean? This is great for building automations. So for example, if let's take a look at what are the product events. Here's an example. I can essentially add this module to my manifest, subscribe to this event every time. Let me zoom in. Every time a Jira issue is updated, my app is going to run some code here, index.run. And again, if you're not a developer, I know that this might seem like gibberish to you, but there are examples, even just right from Forge Create. When you do Forge Create, you can choose trigger, and it'll give you a template of an app that'll look very similar to this. And every time an issue is updated, your app can perform something. It can be notified as to what that issue was, and then you can do things. Somebody creates a page, you can automatically, add a comment to that in Confluence. Somebody creates an issue, you can do maybe some validation. Hey, is that summary and description good? You know what I mean? If you wanted to do any kind of validation, any kind of checking, any kind of compliance things, anything that you can imagine, this is a great, thing to, a great module to use. Again, I'm in the reference and modules. And I did talk about the product REST APIs. So a Forge app on its own that just, prints out static information like I had the hello world, maybe not very cool. You're going to be using product REST APIs. And it's very extensive. There are a lot of them. And it's not always clear like which one to use. So as you can see, just look at this issues resource. There's just so many kinds of methods in here. And if you ever used like Postman or any kind of REST API client software to kind of like kick around and make API calls, you can get a Postman collection or an open API spec for all of our REST APIs. In fact, I think if you just go to here, yeah, right there, you could just download the open API definition or the Postman collection. And all of these methods will be like popular inside Postman or whatever REST client software you're using. And it's great if you just want to make API calls. Alternatively, if you are signed in, if you were to go, you can make some of these API calls, let me see, yourself. So just from your browser. So if I were to go, let's say, slash myself. This is a very simple one because it doesn't require, I'm not posting any data. I'm just getting data. But I went to mansola.atlassian.net/rest/API/3 myself, and it literally returned all the information about my account. Now, why does this work? I have cookies. I'm authenticated. I'm logged in. But you too can just go to your company name.atlassian.net and it will, if you're logged in, it'll return something similar to this. Obviously, it'll be different. You'll have a different account ID, a different email address, account type, etc. But this is another way to kind of, if you haven't used the product REST APIs at all, this is another thing that you can do. And again, useful for GET calls, like fetching information, not necessarily good to in a browser to try to create issues. Like that's something you would either do in code or you do like using Postman. Okay. So I find that when I'm trying to learn something new, like a new programming language or a framework, that learning by example is incredibly useful. So imagine you can take a Forge app that someone else has built. You can install it on your instance, but you can also look at the source code and the manifest and just play around with it and experiment to see how it works. Well, we can find a whole set of sample apps in the documentation. So if I head back over to developer.atlassian.com, let's go to Forge. And if you click on Learn and Example Apps, let's say for Jira, there's just a whole bunch of sample apps here that are completely open source. And in fact, these links go to the repositories. And you can check them out yourself. There's instructions on how to use them. So I'll give you an example of one that I think it's probably a really good starting point. It's called the Project Introduction app. It's on that list that I was just on. And it's a good place to start because it uses something called the global page module. And it'll introduce you to UI components like the lozenge or the button or components that help you align things and elements exactly where you want them. Like there's this stack element or the inline element that helps you do things like that. There's also a great sample app called the ITSM dashboard, ITSM dashboard charts. And sometimes the best way to present data is with a graph or a chart. Well, Forge has a number of UI kit modules that make it easy to create bar charts, stacked bar charts, pie charts, much more. And this sample app allows you to generate each of these charts, and then you can easily integrate data and visualizations into your app and see like the mechanics of how that works. And we're going to dive into that one. And then we have this, it's the first sample app that's listed in the Jira was this issue translation app. And this one's kind of cool because it uses the Jira issue panel, but it also integrates with a third-party API to instantly translate an issue summary into any number of languages. So it's a great way to learn how to make external API calls, which is great when you want to build an integration like with an outside system. And this is just a really simple example of that. And then a more advanced sample app that just kind of came out is the Q&A creator, the virtual agent for Rovo. And I'm not sure how many people have experience using Rovo yet, or even have seen a demo. But it's one of our parts of our product AI suite. And this Forge app acts as a virtual agent, allowing you to interact from within Rovo. So with this app, sample app, you can navigate to any, and you just ask it to create a set of questions and answers based on the content on the page, and then it inserts a macro on the QA with that Q&A list. And why this is cool is it's neat to see like how to build an agent using Forge, a Rovo agent, but it also shows you the power of AI and large language models. But it also shows that you can insert macros as well. So macro, by the way, if you are interested in building a macro, is a Forge module, so you can build a Forge as well. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate how you can quickly download one of these sample apps, register it as your own, deploy it, install it, etc. Okay, and I'll start with, just maybe out of interest of time, I'm going to I might have time for one. I'm going to do this one here, the issue translator. And what you're going to do is, I'm just going to go to this repository here, and you can clone it directly into VS Code, or you can, if you're not familiar with that, you can just download like a zip file of it, right? And just download a zip, and then just unzip it, and then whatnot. I'm going to hop into my editor here because I already downloaded it. Didn't do anything. I just right there, and I'm going to open it up in my editor. So I downloaded the zip file, and here it is. So real quick is what do we have? The manifest. Let's start there. Manifest. Okay, so I made a couple changes. I want to change this title. So we have the manifest, and again, it's using the Jira issue panel. One thing that's different about this is that it's using there's a permission section in this one, and in order for your app to do certain things, like even read issues or write issues, make comments, you have to provide scopes. And so this one needs to be able to read Jira issues. So we have to explicitly define that. And this is also in the documentation. Additionally, this app will make an API call out to Azure, to microsofttranslator.com. And that's how it's doing the language translations. I've gone ahead and I ran this command, but if you were to download this and you follow the directions in the README, it'll say that the first thing you need to do, well, let me get a better view of this one moment. The first thing you'll need to do is, we'll download it, A, but then B, you'll run this command, forge register. This is equivalent of doing a forge create, right? It will register the app as if it were your own. It'll give it its own app ID, which every app has in this manifest. Like this is, if you go, I'm in my manifest now. In this app section, you'll see this app ID. This is unique to every single Forge app, has to have its own unique app ID. And when you run Forge register, it registers the app with its own unique app ID, and it creates a copy of this app for you. Now this is yours. And now you can deploy it, and then you can install it. So I'm going to take, again, this is just the sample app I downloaded for the issue translator. And let's see, it's doing some packaging. Now in this example app, because it's into integration, you do need to have an API key, which I happen to have full of them already, but they're free from Azure. But I'm going to paste them in surreptitiously once the thing is done deploying. Okay, it says deployed. Now I just have a couple commands here where I am going to paste in an API key in these things called Forge variables, environment variables. So environment variables, if you have variables that you want to use, these are particularly useful for storing like credentials and or like environment information. They're available in your app code. So watch Forge variables list. I'm in the development. So when you create a new app or register one, it creates 3 environments for you: development, staging, and production. And here in my development environment, I have these are the two two forge variables that we need, that this app needs, and I just pasted my API key in there. And later on in the code, it's actually going to utilize, grab that key and utilize it. So before I get into the code itself, because this is, let's just go with the next part of instructions. We've deployed it. Now I'm going to install it on my instance. Jira, type in the name of my instance. Here's what's something that's interesting. Because we have permissions and scopes, it says your app will be installed with the following scopes. Read Jira work. Your app will exchange data with the following. Doesn't this look familiar? This looks like when you install an app on your phone and it has certain or really anything where you do sign in with your Google account as an example on some website, and what it's going to do with that data or what it's going to access. This is very similar, like to that OAuth kind of experience. So we're just going to answer yes. We do agree. We're going to install this app on our instance, and let's just take a look at it. Purpose of this is to show you that there's hello worlds are great. In fact, you do a forge create, like I said, you can choose any of the templates and you'll get functional code, right? But these sample apps are a lot more interesting to go over and quicker. So we did a forge install. Now let's go over to my instance. Oh, here, we just reload this one here. And we have our little Hello World app. And here it is. This is the app. Say I wanted to translate this into Spanish. It just took the summary, the description, and the summary and the description, and it translated them. Now, here's something interesting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to shrink this over here. Let's keep it on the screen. So here's the translate stuff. Let's try it again, Spanish. I'm going to run the tunnel so we can maybe make some changes to this live and see if my demos don't fail again. Okay, here we go. So watch this. I'm gonna do this in Japanese now, and you'll see it entered the request, and now it's running the Forge app from my computer, not from the cloud. So why is that interesting? Make some changes as an example. Let's go into the code. I'm going to go to front end, index.jsx. And by the way, like all of this that's rendered, that was shown, these buttons, etc., that all came from this app and this code, index.jsx. And there it is right there. Here's in the languages. Let's say, for instance, I wanted to add Kenya. Swahili, maybe? Yes? Let's get Kenya emoji flag. Let's copy that. Paste. Language code, what's Swahili's language code? SW? I'm going to guess. Okay, and I'll get rid of Korean. I'll save this. Hopefully no syntax errors. And I'm running the tunnel, listening for requests. Let's head back over to here. Let's reload. Come on, work. Swahili. Okay, I need some verbal confirmation. Was that correct? Yes. Okay. I hope it is. And I was being culturally sensitive here that I chose Swahili. But that's how easy it is. I just was demonstrating the tunnel and how quickly it is to iterate. But also like to take something like, I guess I would say it's kind of a complex thing of going out and making an external API call. Like, where was that API call? don't have enough time to probably dig into it now, but it's inside here. If you go to Resolver, and inside this Resolvers folder and open up this is kind of the back-end code. And in here, you're going to find where and how the API call was made, right? So this is the API endpoint that we called. We also fetched the summary and description from Jira. We got that first. And then we sent the call over to Azure or to Microsoft along with our key to make to get the translation. And then we inserted that translation back into our front end over here. So again, mechanically, it might be hard to follow, but given enough time, I think that if you download this sample app for yourself and try it, you'll get through it, right? And you'll understand kind of mechanically how it works. And if you don't understand how it works, of course, you can always ask a question on the developer community forums, and somebody can help explain that code. Or, as I mentioned, one of the benefits of using an editor like this is I have GitHub Copilot installed. And let's say, for instance, I was like, I just don't know what this code does, right? You could just highlight code and Copilot and say explain, and it'll explain what this code is doing, right? The provided code snippet is a functional component, and it just explains these things to you. And if it's too, can you simplify that? Right? If it gets too complex, you can ask it to simplify, and this helps explain like sections of code to you. You just highlight some text or say, hey, what the heck does line 26 do? It'll tell you, right? So again, if you're not familiar with what I'm doing here, I'm in my editor and I just happen to have this extension installed called GitHub Copilot. And that's not the only one. There's a whole bunch of other ones as well. But this is a popular one and it's very easy to use. And I recommend it if you haven't tried out AI powered coding yet. All right. So, by the way, let's go back to my browser here. So I have Swahili in here, but let's say I'm running this from the tunnel. I did not run Forge deploy, right? I hit Control C and I stop the tunnel. What do you think is going to show up here? Still see Swahili? It won't. It's going to revert back to what is actually in the cloud, right? I was just running my local version. If I wanted to those changes that I made right here, I'd have to reuse Forge deploy. And once I do that, every instance that has my app installed, let's say, for instance, I'm a Jira admin. I built this app and I installed it across like 6 different Jira clouds. They had the same app here installed. The moment I hit Forge deploy, it'll roll out to all of those instances immediately, the moment that this thing is done. So next, when this is and I do a reload of this issue view, this issue panel here will have Swahili in it. By the way, from a UI perspective, remove these, and then get them Hello World back in there by just going to. Just so you know that this will also persist. So even if I close out my browser to this issue 82, this will come up again. So if this is deployed, if I refresh now, because it's pulling the code on my laptop, but from the app environment, it should say, or eventually it will. There it is. So now it is deployed and it's official. All right. Awesome. Let's see. I'm going to do one more live demo sample app, and it's the for charts. This is a common that I get, like, hey, could you make? Well, there are a bunch of Forge UI kit modules that are that make it like really easy to create bar charts. And if you go to presentation, to Forge, build a Forge app. And it could be in other places, but this is the only place where I know where it is. If I go to reference user interface. So, by the way, so far, as an example, in our Hello World app, where we, if I, when we used only the text component, which basically was here. And again, it just looks like this as an example, right? You import it. This is the copy paste, if you will. You can copy this and paste it, and it uses this right here. This text element, and what we used in our Hello World. Well, there's a bunch of other elements other than types, other than text, and there's buttons, boxes, badges, lozenges, etc. There's these right here. So early access, but for all intents and purposes, it's available to you now. So if you wanted to create you can create a bar chart, and they give you examples to do that. So here's just some sample data that they provide in this, and then you make that available, and then even has a link to an example app I'm going to do right now. So again, if you're on those in the reference UIKit charts modules, you'll get a link to this repo here. Very similar to what I done before is that you could just go to downloads and download the zip file, or if you're in Visual Studio Code, you could just click this clone, click this, and open up, and it'll just clone a new copy for you. Now I'm going to do that because I already cloned a copy, and I'm going to go into that right now. So let me clean up my desktop a little bit with some of these others. Okay, so I downloaded it here. You can do the same later. I'm going to open it up in Visual Studio Code. Again, let's look at the. So the manifest is utilizing this new module we've got. It's called the project page. And when you're on a project, it will show your app name on the left-hand column. Another kind of like project level commands. And then when you click on that, your app will render on in a big area in the context of, so when it'll render, this module will show our app on the left nav. When you click on that, it will run this code here, right? It'll run this code. And all that code does is, where am I? On the front end. Well, this is less interesting, more interesting if I actually install the thing. So do one moment. So I did a Forge register already. Then you'll do a deploy. I did a deploy already. I will now do an install. I did this beforehand because I knew that that it takes forever. So here we go. Forge. Type in the name of your instance. So once this is installed, I should be able to head over to instance. And here on the left-hand side, it should show up here once it's fully installed. So again, I'm on my project, Acme done. And on the left-hand side, somewhere in here, my app name will show up. Let's reload. It says it said that it is installed now, and hopefully it will show up. Come on. Oh, no, not this, because it has to be a different kind of project. It's going to be a ITSM, a service project. Where are you? Ah, there it is. ITSM issues. And click on that. There it is. Awesome. So this is very static data, okay? But the real beauty of this is that all these visualizations were done in Forge using these modules with very little, relatively little code. So if I were to gear, let me close this window here, and okay, here we go. At the very top of my index.jsx in my front end, you have to import things. So we're importing a bunch of these modules, text, just like the hello world, but there's these other ones here, right? So you just import these. And when you import them, that means now you can use them down in your, when you render, like when you are sending stuff out. This is like the header text that was right here. This part is defined. This is the fun by the taking a sample app and dissecting it. You're like, how in the what? Where did this text come from? You'll find it. It's in here. This text right here is right. And so that's a text component, and they're using this other module that I'm not particularly familiar with, the bottom padded box. But now you see like how nicely aligned these things are too, right? Like they're just beautifully like spread out in the right places. How that's done is by utilizing these elements here, the stack and inline. And stack helps you to align things vertically, horizontally. And again, you can kind of just mess with this stuff and see like, okay. Oh, by the way, here's another cool thing about using a code, an AI code editor. All of these numbers here, this is all data. These are all mocks of data. Okay. So for instance, this is new versus resolved issues. Let's find that. New and resolved issues. So this data, see, all static. Whoever built this lovely sample app just created an array of objects that has dates and numbers. Check this out. If I wanted to, let's say, get different numbers in there, hopefully I'm in the right place. Let's see. Copilot. Explain. Provides a code snippet and defines exports, blah, blah, blah. Well, let's say, can you change the numeric values to some random numbers between 10 and 500? I just want to have something different in there. Here I'm coding, having a conversation with some AI, and look, it made some code suggestions here. It just created random numbers. It didn't mess with anything else. It didn't change these. I can have it change those too, but I didn't. And I can just click this little button here. I can copy and paste it, or I could just click this, and it says applying the code block using that, and watch this magically. New values are in there. Save that. Gives you a little warning. And let's go into our tunnel. And one moment. Boy, this is really getting sloppy here. I got so much stuff happening. Pardon me. There. Terminal. Okay, now I'm going to do a forge tunnel, and let's see how the representation on this graph, if it changes at all with that new data. As you can see, I'm getting more and more excited about like AI things, not just because I work at Atlassian and we're doing like really cool things with AI, but just in general. I just think that it's really going to change. It already is changing like how we work, even as software engineer. So here we go. You see the kind of the pattern here of this, how that's mapped out. Let's read that, and hopefully we see different numbers. Yes, kind of neat, eh? Now, graphs and visualizations, not messing around with code. Those are defined here. So let's look, for instance, this new versus resolved issues, a line graph. And let's see, here it is right here. So it's a line chart. And this is the title, subtitle, and it gets its data from these data mocks. Again, I'm not going to take the time to kind of go through all of the how mechanics of how all of this works. I think that between going into the developer documentation for line chart, looking at kind of like trying to dissect, zoom in closer and try to dissect how these things work, it's kind of the fun of it, and that's how you learn, right? That being said, I do think that we are going to have a session focused strictly on visualizations at some other time that we'd love to present to you guys as well. Okay, Let's see. All right. I think that might be good just for the sample apps now. I'd say like, before like I wrap up this section of the talk and move on to the next thing, I'm going to leave you with some next steps. I would say get your free dev instance or sandbox if you don't have one already, right? Get your environment set up. But when I use the word dev environment, that just basically means the setup on your computer so that you of Node.js and the Forge CLI, etc. Explore the documentation. There's so much more on there that I didn't cover today. Things like persistence, like Forge storage. It's a service, for saving data. And of course, there's an abundant collection of Forge modules and UI kit components, the product REST APIs, etc. You definitely want the sample apps. It's a pretty good collection on there right now. And if you're not a developer, I'm kind of in this mode where I know I'm talking a lot less like software engineer professionals. You have that editor installed, and you just don't know. I mean, of course, head over to the developer community and feel free to ask questions. It's a safe space to ask any kind of question. And not only will Atlassians read your questions and answer them, but also other partners will too. So the docs and sample apps, good thing. If you haven't embarked on it yet, go on the Forge Quest. It's like this kind of guided fun tour of exercises and challenges. That's, I don't know. I think it's really fun. It's evolving. It's growing. One of my colleagues, Melissa, she's kind of driving this and coming up with awesome ideas. And of course, open to some feedback too. But yeah, check out the Forge Quest. And I mentioned this a couple times. I didn't give you a URL. You might be familiar with the user community at community.atlassian.com. Well, we also have a developer community forum at community.developer.atlassian.com. You just log in with your Atlassian ID, and it is a place where it's just about all things related. Whether it's about new things that are coming out that we're trying to act from partners, developers, customers, and partners. If people are asking questions, it's a great like forum exchange for just sharing ideas, looking for support, etc. Right. And then one other resource that I think you'll find very valuable is the Atlassian Developer YouTube channel. We do some deep dive video training sessions, tutorials, and a lot of really cool, smaller, bite-sized content, 5 minutes, 3 minutes that you're going to find really cool. And then there's this new thing where one of my colleagues, Katerina, is doing this Forge Roundup where she's finding all of the vital, latest and greatest, coolest things that are evolving on the Forge platform and kind of summarizing them all there to present to you, and just a few minutes so you can find out stay on top of what's happening, but just going into the subscribing to the Atlassian Developer YouTube channel. Okay, for me that felt like about 10 seconds, but I'm sure that for everybody else that felt like the hour and a half that it was. Might be a good time to take a break before we continue the second part, where I'm going to present on how to build a Jira dashboard gadget with Forge. I'm going to escape out of this and see if there's anything in the chat and stop sharing. Or anybody can speak up if you have any questions or comments. Maybe just hands in the room. Was anyone able to follow along well at all, easily, or was it going too quickly? I see one hand. 2, 3. All right. Okay, cool. Who here was more excited about just dashboard gadgets? And that's why you're here, or you just wanted to? Was it just about Forge, really, just more generally speaking? Yeah. Okay. Let me head over to chat. Okay. Well, if you do have any questions, it's going to be hard for me to capture them audibly. but feel free to type them into the chat or give them to Michael if you're not logged into the Bevy event, which would probably be awkward if you're in that room because of the sound feedback. But yeah, please reach out with any kinds of questions, and I've been happy to either address them live or address them asynchronously by email. Right, I'm happy to do that.
So
Okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
So if I'm building on Forge, especially for code gists, is there like a support email or Slack or some place I can reach out to the community and get a quick response?
So your question was like if you're working on CodeGeist. We have, I mean, honestly, the best place is the developer community forums. And given that I mean, the deadline's in a few days, if you have something that is absolutely vital and essential that needs attention, and you're like, shoot, no one's getting to me, I mean, just reach out to me by email or on the Atlassian community Slack. I'm happy to make myself available there too. But generally speaking, for the rest of the world, no, they just have to go to the developer community forums and ask a question there. But I will give an inside connection to the folks here in the room. How many people here are building something for CodeGeist? Or maybe you don't know what that is. So CodeGeist is our annual hackathon, 170,000 USD in prizes. But moreover, it's the glory of winning a hackathon is the apps. And I'm sorry, I'll back up. It's also the journey of learning how to do something and build something cool, and hopefully collaboratively with other people. But yeah, it's. Let me just share my screen and show.
So as you share your screen, there is, yeah, it's showing.
Okay, great.
So as you share the screen, there's someone who was actually building, I don't know if they are around today, and they had the challenge of installing Rovo agents on AWS to integrate with the Forge for the app they were building. So they had a challenge with that. So I'm going to let them know that they can send those questions on the developer platform, but of course they can send an email to you.
They can say, yeah. I mean, obviously, one of the downsides, there is no like. You can submit tickets for bugs, but you're not going to get development advice from the developer support team. But yeah, you're more than happy to field a question by email if it's something that you wanted to chat more, talk, or share more privately about. You can email me, or I mean, head over to if you're not particularly sensitive to disclosing what you're working on, I would post it on community.developer.atlassian.com. There are just far more experts on there that probably have a lot more experience, generally like specific experience of doing AWS integrations, etc. But yeah, I'd happy to. I'm please share my email, and I can dig in. So for those that aren't familiar, this is it's at codegeist.devpost.com. It's annual hackathon, enormous prizes, and there are categories, etc. To compete for specific prizes. And there's a big focus on this thing called the concept of system of work, and building apps that align across teams across the organization, right? So these are the kind of the categories. And then there's also these little bonus categories, like if it runs on Atlassian, which means that there is no data egress, so no integrations with external services, it would qualify to potentially win that prize. This may not apply to most people in the room here, but this is called the Connect to Forge. If you have an existing app that's built on Connect and you then port it over to Forge, and then 3 best Rovo apps, which is our AI powered knowledge discovery system. Cool. The deadline for this is the 10th, and yeah, we're just a few days away. You see the number of participants. This is almost twice the amount as last year, but don't be discouraged if you're like, oh shoot, that's just way too many people. Because I mean, I honestly, it's only going to be probably a couple hundred entries total, right? Like these are just people that have decided to join the hackathon, but they may not necessarily be building something. If you have an idea for something, even if it is very bare bones and basic, but it's useful, I highly recommend this. I'm a recovering hackathon addict. I used to do hackathons all of the time, and I wish I could compete in this one because I do have some ideas in the back of my head, cool things to build. But we also have an internal hackathon here at Atlassian that we do every quarter, so I kind of participate in those. But yes, dig into this if you can. All right, I'm gonna go grab a quick coffee. If it's all right, Michael, maybe like 5 minutes, and then we can get onto the gadgets part.
Yeah, we have around 30 minutes remaining. I don't know if
How many
that will
minutes?
be enough. Around 30.
30? Okay, yeah, I'll squeeze it in.
Okay, that's
Perfect.
fine.
All right, awesome. I'll be right back. Thank you. Okay.
Oh, thank you. Can I speak? Can I ask a question?
Sure. And if it's going to take too long, I will just take it offline with you because I have a limited time to get through this next segment. But go ahead.
Okay. Can you explain how secure by default?
What like, expand on that?
Explain secure by default, the benefit
Yeah,
to building with 4G.
sure. The
Yeah,
reason
thank
why
you.
oh, you're welcome, Kasim. The reason why why we say it's secure by default is that the application is stored and runs on Atlassian Cloud. So if you were to build an app that does not egress or export data to another service, it is never exposed to a third party. Do you know what I mean? Like if you were to, that being said, if you were to have an app that you'd have to host elsewhere, data is now leaving Atlassian's cloud, coming back into Atlassian's cloud, and then back to the customer. That does not happen here. Architecturally, it stays within Atlassian's cloud completely, and that's from a security posture is for some customers in particular is important. We saw this quite a bit when we have customers that are running Jira or Confluence Data Center, and they control that. It's behind their firewall. Well, now a company that wants to move to the cloud, when they need to install an app that was built by somebody else, they want assurances that the data is being kept and held safely, and that is why we consider Forge by default, very secure. We obviously do have partners that are also like they have SOC 2 compliance, ISO 27001. They have all of the things that make them that prove and audit. They're audited as secure organizations, and they might have their own cloud apps that are maybe not on Forge. They're also very secure, but just Forge on its own is considered like vanilla Forge app running completely on Atlassian is by design inherently secure. Happy to dig into that more later, but if you have any more questions, Kasim, reach out to me by email. I'm going to hop into share my screen again. And let's see. One moment. Share entire screen. This one. Okay. So I know we're kind of short on time, and next we're going to build a Jira dashboard gadget app with Forge. And just to be clear, let me head over to my instance, and let's make sure we're all on the same page of what a dashboard is and what a gadget is. So dashboards. This is the default dashboard. This probably looks very familiar if you've ever kind of messed around with your own Jira instance. This is like the default generic dashboard. Well, what can you do? Like, what do we mean by gadgets? All of these things here are gadgets. If I were to edit this dashboard, I can add a gadget to this. Let's say, for instance, I wanted to add this average age by chart. Add, and it puts it right here. And let's configure it. Let's say I want it to be this project. Whoops. Come on. Not working. Oh, there it is. And then you can drag these things around too, right? So this is and these individual things are gadgets, right? And this is what you can build a Forge app. There is a Forge app module. I'm sorry, a Forge module that allows you to build gadgets. So let me delete this gadget here. I might even delete this one here. And I want to create a new one. I'm going to put it right here. So I'm going to save this. So this is my default dashboard, right? It only has some gadgets on the right-hand side. I'm going to build a new one from. So the one I want to build is something called the weather gadget. And it's going to be a little hard to follow, particularly in this time. The good news is that this is actually part of the Forge Quest. where you'll get, it's a little more challenging, but there are step-by-step instructions on how to do this with a little bit of massaging. And it's going to look, the gadget we're going to build is going to look something like this on the right-hand side. It's just going to show the current weather for a specific location. So the gadget that we're building with Forge is both a UI-based app, right? It's going to be embedded inside of a dashboard as a gadget, and it's an integration because we're going to be retrieving weather data from an external weather service API, the Open Weather Map API. It's free to sign up, and you can get like 1,000 API calls per day, and it's just it's a neat little thing to integrate. The mechanics for making a call, their documentation show you right here. You get api.openweathermap.org, give it a latitude, give it a longitude, give it an API key, and you're off to the races. It'll return some weather, some current weather conditions and forecasts for that location. Okay, so I'm going to hop into my terminal and browser, and I'm going to do my best to do this live. I'm probably going to do some copying and pasting just so that it'll go faster. But let's try this. Maybe I'll just show you the beginnings of how it would work. Oops. One moment. Where the hell am I? Okay, so I would do a Forge create. We'll call it the weather gadget. I might have one on there already, but let's call it the weather gadget. And I will go to UI kit, Jira, and Jira dashboard gadget is what I'm going to select right there. Similar to when we created our Hello World, Hello Kenya app, we choose Jira issue panel, and it just showed Hello World. Well, this is going to essentially do the same thing, but it's going to do it in a gadget form factor. So once this thing creates, our next Forge command will be Forge deploy, and then we're going to do a Forge install. And then what we hope to see in our gadget list is this new gadget that we just created. And again, out of interest of time, I'm going to go into the Forge quest and accelerate this. You know, it's not a race. I would later on, if you're like, yeah, you know what, I do want to upskill on app development on Forge or just Atlassian tools, go through the Forge quest. I think you'll really enjoy it. And there's a bunch of people that do it, and like you just post a little message on the community forums, a little screenshot of you getting it done. And we're working on trying to give a little swag, give something out for people that complete it. But yeah, it's a good way to learn. Come on, app. If this doesn't, there we go. Let's see what it says. Okay, it created the weather gadget. Let's go into that directory and let's take a look. So look, it looks very similar to what am I doing? Code. Here we go. The editor, weather gadget. One moment, I'll make this bigger. Okay, so manifest. This is Jira dashboard gadget. Okay. What is it going to do? So here's the title of our gadget, a description of it, and code-wise, it's going to load this front-end JSX. So again, I think you'll take some time to kind of understand some of the syntax later, but like it is going to run this code. And what does that do? If I go to front-end index.js, there's a whole bunch of other modules here. Of course, the text, but there's some other ones in here too, some forms, some buttons, etc. But before we get into the code, why don't we just go and deploy and install. Okay, again, here's my dashboard. If I were to say edit this dashboard, and I say add gadget, well, here's a list of all the gadgets, right? And it's probably not going to show up in there until I install it. So let's let this thing deploy first. And then Forge install, third step. You can choose Jira, type in the name of your instance, continue. Awesome. So now it says it is installed. If I were to refresh this page, I'm on my dashboards. I'm going to add a gadget. I'm going to search for weather. Ooh, which one is it? I did make one earlier. Let's just try this one. Please don't be the one that's done. Oh, it is. Damn it. Okay, let's delete that one. Here we go. This is the Hello World version that we just created. So done. So what does this thing do? The weather gadget doesn't know anything yet. It says I need to configure it. So I need to hit edit, configure. Oh, I have to type in something. Hello, Michael. Submit, and it just value hello, Michael, and like that's all it does. And if we were to look at the source code, you'd see just hello world. We're putting in a field name, and we're echoing out that out to, it doesn't really do it right here. Gadget configuration field name. So instead of just static hello world, there's something a little bit more dynamic about this one. We're taking a value that we stored from the configuration step and presenting it on the view. So this is where I'm going to get directly into the out of time. So let's go to the Forge Quest. Welcome right here. So you'll find this on developer.atlassian.com or just search Google for Forge Quest. And I recommend you go from the very beginning, like do them all, because there's the novice ones. Well, this is the apprentice, so this one's a little bit more complex. And we estimate it to take about 40 minutes, but we're getting this in about 10 because I did the Forge create. I went into the gadget, I deployed it, I installed it, we viewed it. They want us to run the tunnel, which is great. They're saying, hey, open up this index.jsx file, and it should look like this, and edit the function so that instead of just saying value, it's going to ask for a city, right? If you go and also it's going to ask for a country. So the way that this challenge is laid out, it's kind of like it doesn't really give you the answers, but I think at the bottom, yeah, we do. So don't cheat, but we are going to cheat. It says that your front end index.jsx should look something like this, and it just kind of gives. So I'm just going to copy this, and let's go into the code. And index.jsx, I'm literally going to copy, kill all that, and paste what it should do. And really, all we did was we added a couple fields here. We registered. This is some other stuff that I think that you'll probably, we don't have time to dive into now, but in terms of like registering form fields, like here's a form field for city and for country. Let me save this, and I'm going to run the tunnel, and we can see what the difference is. That was this is on the configuration screen for this gadget. So let's wait for the tunnel to finish, and I'm going to head over to my dashboard. There's a weather gadget, and edit, and let's go to configure. Now there is a configure, and it should display those two fields, right? So this was the first part of the Forge Quest, and then, right, it doesn't really, it just, so it shows that it can persist this configuration data for this gadget, okay? And then the next step of the quest is here. Now it's about the Open Weather API. And I do have a key. Let's go grab it. So if again, at your own pace, when you go through this, it's basically saying, hey, grab an open weather API key. It's free. And you need to set an environment variable with that, right? So I think I have one here. Let's see, open weather. Oops. There it is. So I set that. I got to do another, well, when you create these variables, you have to do deploys. Then it's saying you have to add permissions to your manifest. Just like the Azure one for the language translations, we need to give our app expression to make an external API call. Okay. And then let's see if we provide a full manifest here. Moment. Manifest. Oh, here it is. Your manifest should look like this. So all I did was add this section right here. So copy that. I'll go to my manifest. At the very bottom, there should be no app permissions in here yet, but there we go. Save that. Anytime, like, you know how I was running and I was making changes to the JavaScript code and it automatically incorporated all that. That is not the case when it comes to making changes to the manifest. Any material change like this is going to require a redeploy. In fact, if you tried to, make some code changes that were make API calls and you did not deploy this and you did not, what I'm going to show you next is upgrade, it won't allow the app to make any of those API calls. That's, again, another security thing. So let's go back up here one moment. Sorry, I'm scrolling really fast. Here we go. Source resolvers. Okay, so the instructions here are telling you how to, things that you need to do kind of step by step. But then at the very bottom, cheating. Reverse should look like this. I'm going to copy this. 1 second. Yes. Okay, here we go. So resolvers should look like this. This resolvers folder, index.js. And right now, this is the hello world version. There's really nothing in it. Delete all that and paste this in. Now, if you went through the exercise, you'd see like it's actually code that makes the API call based on the city and country that was typed in. This was actually going to try to find the lat long by using their one of their geo-resolver endpoints. That's the back end, the index.js file. Now the front end index.jsx, I think that it should look like this. One moment, right here. Copy all that. I'm going to paste over all of this, make sure I'm in place, save that. I should be good to go, meaning that if I were to go to my terminal and type in forge deploy, so you saw the state that I was in, like we only got it to the point, our gadget was only to the point where I was typing in 2 field values and it was saving them. The code that's pasted now, though, hopefully that was the end of it, would be to make an API call out to the Open Weather Map API to do a geo lookup on that, and then help us grab lat long, and then that's in the configuration part, and then on the rendering part, it would actually make the API call to get the current weather. So here we go. I made a change to the manifest. And anytime you do that, when you've added new scopes or egress URLs, it says you have to run this. This is equivalent to, let's say you have an app on your phone and the author app decided to say, hey, I want to see all the person's photos. And that app was not, or I want to get the person's location. But the first time you installed the app, it did not request those permissions. Well, this is essentially the same thing. Now saying that, hey, by the way, your app, it's different. It wants to exchange data with this. Do you want to continue? Yes. So this is a required step, right? In the real world, if this app and you made a change to a manifest that requested more permissions and permission changes, an admin would have to explicitly approve that upgrade through the UI, not through the CLI, but through the UI. They'd be presented with like, hey, like there's a new version of this app. Do you give them do you give this permission to this app to do these things, right? If they don't, if the admin does not do that, it'll run on the previous version. Kind of funky, but that's how it works. So here we go. It says your app is in development environment now. It's ready to go. I'm going to run the tunnel, and so we can see what is. Let's go back to here, and let's reload all this. Okay, now there is no lat long. I need to hit configure. Nairobi. Aha. Can you? Right here. So this was using one API method from that company to get a list of kind of like known locations. And when I submit that, it found the lat long. Okay. Now, if I'm done here with the configuration, it shows the information that it's saved. The last step of this quest is to get the UI all together. And so again, cheating, I'm going to go to the very bottom here. The view function should look like this. Let me see if there's a final form here. Okay, here we go. Your index.jsx should look like this. Copy. This is the front end code. I'm going to do this just in time, aren't I? Index.jsx, make sure you're in the right one. JSX, index.jsx is your front end code. Index.js and this resolvers is your back end code. Do not mess those up. I have done that before. I'm going to save that and see if there was any changes here that need to be made. I don't think so. Nope. Let's see. I guess we'll just go to the browser and see if it worked. Reload. No. Oh, I got to run the tunnel. Sorry. Did it? If I do demo fail, it's no big deal because then you could just go through the Forge quest and see what it was supposed to do. One moment. Let's make sure I saved everything. Oh no, I need to make one more set of changes. Ah, look at this PNG file. It can't load the graphics, so we need to go back into our manifest, which is right here. And I did miss instructions, and that was, well, I gotta say permissions right here. I need to add this. We can get images, not just make API calls, but images. So let's copy that, go into my manifest, change that, save. What else? Index.js. Okay, I think we're good. I think if I save this and I hit on my terminal, Forge deploy. Michael, how are we on time? Am I at time right now?
Yes, we're out of time, but you can add 15 minutes. Is okay, guys?
Just one, yeah. Give me two minutes, and if I fail, then you can finish this quest on your own.
No worries.
Cool. I know it's Saturday evening. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, see, I mean, what a great way to spend your Saturday night, geeking out on a computer with me. Let's see, fixed term. One last Forge install upgrade. Okay, so I have to do this install upgrade, and this should. I can't end on a demo fail, guys. Okay, let's try this again. Reload. Oh, come on. It's so close. What is it complaining about? There's no definition for get current weather. Okay, give me 1 second. Get current weather. Oh, right here. Got it. Get call current weather. Okay, here it is. Use this. In the function. Da, da, da. All right. I'm not going to bore you guys with this one, but anyhow, what it will end up looking like is this. It literally is probably like 3 lines of code I need to add, but I don't want to. It'll come up with something that'll have Nairobi in there. So if you do this, then you would have finished the Forge quest, which I'll implore that you all do. So again, before I end, just again, next steps: get your dev environment set up, get Node.js and Forge CLI installed. It sounds as if there's already people that have it done. So if any of you are having difficulty, please just talk to your friends there. The Forge quest, go to the dev community. Michael has my email address. I'm in. Feel free to use it. And if you are building something for Codegeist, or if you're just like, hey, I just want to talk, privately about some issue that I'm having, feel free to email me. But for scale, really, the dev community is the best. And definitely smash the subscribe button on YouTube and check that out. It is really a useful, a useful tool. Thanks everyone for coming and spending your Saturday with me. I'm very excited to see the kinds of stuff that you build, and yes, appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dale. I don't know if there's any question. You can take 1 or 2 questions. Yes, you can come close. Yeah, come in. You can get close then.
Yeah. Hello.
Get close.
Hello.
Hi there.
So after creating my app, when I wanted to view the app, when I was creating the issues, I couldn't create the issue. Yeah. I'm restricted, so I was asking what to do.
It's really bassy, so I really can't hear it. I heard you were trying to fetch an issue, and you were not able to do that?
Yes.
Okay. Got it. Were you using the example from the documentation?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So, depends. I guess it really depends on what the error was. I'm not sure if you were getting any errors. But that being said, whenever you are running, let's say, into an error, or something's not working out right, and you run the Forge tunnel, I'm going to share my screen for a second and show you something that I did not talk about. They're called logs, and logs are right here. A moment. You can literally type in Forge logs, and you can get a list like all of the console logs that came out of your backend code. Okay, things that were like you were making that API call. Additionally, if you're like, man, I don't know what the hell is happening, just go to developer.com/apps, and you can go into this console here, and you can look at all the logs here. Now, again, the logs that show, you had to choose development. The logs that show up here are not console logs sent out on the client side. These have to be backend ones, like on the resolvers index.js, for example. And you should see your error here. If it was any kind of error, like in the error that you might have experienced, could have just been a malformed request, right? But if you're struggling after this, email me or post it on the community forums, because it's kind of hard for me to debug it without seeing it.
Thank you.
Right? But if you had an error, it would show up as an error. Again, developer.atlassian.com/apps, or when you're logged in, you just go here and hit my apps, and you'll see a whole bunch of cool stuff in here. for managing your apps. Yeah.
Yeah, hi. My name is
Hi.
Shem. So, hi. So after creating an app, you have to select the category, the product, and the template. So is this subject to what the application you're trying to create, or you can choose any brand according to the template or something? Or is it a must you, or is there a way you can,
Is there a way you can what? I'm sorry.
like depending on what I'm creating, know which ones to use?
Yeah, so this is like a starting point, meaning that even if you wanted your app to do multiple other things, you would simply add the modules, the additional modules, right? So testing 1, 2, 3, I might choose I might choose, let's say, UIKit, Jira, global page. But if I wanted my app to do to have triggers, I would just add that module to my manifest, right? So it doesn't have to be just one thing. As an example, yeah, like that. I guess that is an example. I wanted my gadget to also have some back-end functionality, some automation. I can just add the trigger module and subscribe to an event, and it'll use both modules, right? But when you create an app using Forge Create, it just kind of gives you a starting point, right?
Yeah, cool.
But there's nothing that precludes you from just adding additional things. So here's our weather gadget. If I wanted to add a trigger, I could, and then add the things that have to do with triggers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay, welcome.
So you want to answer the question, please come close.
Hi. Is it possible to create apps that are outside Atlassian using Forge, but you don't get to use them on the marketplace?
So you want to build an app on Forge, but it's not intended to be used on Jira or Confluence or Bitbucket?
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, so that's not within the terms of of Forge. It really is meant for extensibility for the products, right? Yeah. But if your question was listed on the marketplace, no, you can build an app that a private app, right? I mean, there are tens of thousands of those. But if your question is if you can use Atlassian as a hosting platform to run your app somewhere else and it doesn't really interact with Atlassian products, that's not the intended use case.
Is there anyone else with a question? I think this is the last question.
Hello, Ned. So,
Hi.
so I think my first question would be like, Atlassian has been working on Forge for quite some time. So, is it like is it going to like fully replace Atlassian Connect, or is it like complementing that? That's my first question. Then the second question is, as it sits now, is Forge ready for production? What I mean is, currently I see like on the plan, Forge is free until the end of next year, if I'm not wrong. So if the pricing rolls out and maybe you build something on Forge, how is that going to sit with when the packages now come? So that's why it's a question, like, is it production ready? As for you, like how is it going to be easy for like the pricing model is reduced for using customers who are willing to really be in production fully, roll out into that. Then the last one is, if you compare, like, say, Forge and Atlassian Connect, the things that comes the security, the hosting, and the infrastructure bit. So, but one of the biggest concerns has been about data residency, because maybe like the data center is offshore. So if it's about a company that is so much determined about where the data sets and how they access this data? Is there like maybe a plan to like choose the data sensors, maybe EU or US or whatever they want it to be? Then the final bit, then the final bit, the very last one is also Connect and Forge is kind of the same because they're building solutions for the cloud. But if you look at it, Atlassian still has like, you have like the Jira server or whatever, like you on server. So why does these solutions not support that kind of, or is it because Atlassian, is it like Atlassian is trying to do, to disguise that? Thank you. I don't know. Hopefully there are not so many.
No. So I mean, this is I mean, these are questions coming from someone an experienced solution or marketplace partner, I'm guessing, right? Like, because yeah. So to your first question, like, you know, is Forge meant to replace and or to work with Connect? I mean, I think the reality is that, you know, there are some apps that won't, you know, that maybe can't make it over to Forge because of Forge's limitations or capabilities, right? Based on what the apps do. Now, that being said, I do think that, you know, this is not an official statement, but like, I think the writing is kind of on the wall. Like, this is where our investment is going, right? You've seen it over the past several years. When it first started, it was not very impressive. The feedback that we got was that it was not sufficient enough. There wasn't enough surface area covered, etc. And I think a lot of that has been addressed simply by adding like more teams and resources to this, right? So from the standpoint of somebody who is building something new, I would not go down the Connect route, right? I wouldn't. I mean, I would go down the Forge route. And if there are glaring holes in which the Forge platform cannot meet your the needs of your addressable audience or your particular use case, then you need to bring that up with like the Forge team. But like that's just, you know, again, unofficial advice. Like, that's internally, that's where all of our investment is going. You've seen, like, you know, Connect is very much a maintain mode right now, right? And with you know, with our cloud shift and enterprise shift focus, Connect is an issue for a lot of large customers in government. Like, the ones that are on-prem today and moving to cloud, that's a sticking point. Is having data, like, just data, the whole flow egress away. That being said, again, a trusted partner that has all the certifications and audits probably would pass muster with a company the customer that was concerned about those things. But to get to your point, yeah, I don't have like, I don't have an official statement because that's not my decision. You know, I don't make those decisions, but my advice is anything new that I'm building, I would most definitely default to Forge, if possible, right? You had some other ones in there too about, I can't now I'm kind of flustered. It was all in the vein of Connect.
Oh, sorry.
What was
the pricing?
Yes. Yeah, that's another area that, like, yeah, I can't really provide an answer there, not because I'm holding anything back, it's because I'm just not in the know. I know we've been talking about from the day that Forge was even a concept and beta, like, internally we've always been talking about, well, wait a second, this can't be free. And partners have come to us saying, hey, listen, there's no such thing as free. When is this? What is it going to be pricing wise? And we've never looked, I can tell you this confidently, we've never looked at Forge as a way for us to profit, right? We're not trying to make money off of the hosting, off of the compute, right? Like, that's not our motivation. Our motivation is innovation. Our motivation is supporting an ecosystem. That being said, the longer, you know, there are costs involved, and I don't, you know, I don't have, I think that you can, I think come Atlas Camp in February, that's held in Brussels, I imagine by then, if not before then, there'll be more like specifics on pricing. But yeah, I can't, I'm sorry, I don't have any more insight I can share with you there.
Okay, so I think we'll keep waiting on that. Hopefully, it will come soon. Yeah. The final one was on
but I just wanted to make sure that I made it clear that, like, just so you know, like, I've been involved, like, in discussions about Forge before it was called Forge and before a single line of code shipped anywhere, and it was always internally, like, we didn't look at this as a profit center motive. It was always about trying to just create the best, most secure, easiest to use platform ever. And it was never looked at as like, hey man, we can't wait to profit on this thing. That's not our business, right? Our business is innovation.
Awesome, thanks. The final one was on data residency.
Yeah,
about,
and it's so I think that, one second. Yeah, again, I'm sorry. There, I mean, I think that's a moving target in terms of like of what's available today. In particular, what I mean, we do have documentation on what's available for data residency today, and I do think that, yeah, I mean, I could follow up with you to give you, like, if you can give me like specifics as to what exactly your needs are or your customer needs are, and that is stuff is communicated to the product teams. But I think the end state of all of this is that, yes, customers that choose certain regions to have their data to remain data resident, that everything from compute to storage, etc., eventually, like, that's the end goal, that it would also coincide with the customer's needs, right?
Yeah, I actually asked that question because originally I was trying, when I started on Forge, and we used to do Jira server, and it was not so much possible. Then, wait, what happened? Okay, I'll share the screen. So, and then currently we do Jira Cloud, and I'm like, I can really try build something out, but from at least what I read from the community is like the data is hosted in the US. At least for our company, at least for the company policy and everything, our data resides in EU. And for me, that was a worry, because if one of the data from the Jira Cloud will be, sitting in a different place. Okay, I don't
right
know.
here, yeah, the official position here is, as of like October 30th, when this thing was published, was that enable data residency for support for apps that choose exclusively to use Forge hosted storage, which I think is like Forge storage and the custom entity stores. So that is, I think that's GA now, and there are some caveats, I think, to this. You just have to dig in deeper, and if you do have specific concerns after going through this, if you have not gone, happy to take them offline and get them to the right team.
Yeah, sure. I'm actually seeing this for the first time, so maybe you can share this with Mike, and you'll share it with us. I can go through it, and I think
you can also developer at Atlassian.com. You just search for data residency. It should come up as like one of the, yeah.
Okay. I think that's more of the concerns I was, because I was trying to read this mostly on the community, and there's not so much state on the tweet. Thanks for answering.
Oh, you bet. Yeah, thanks for the questions.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Neil. Let's give it up for Neil once more. So
thanks, everyone.
Neil, early next year, maybe possibly with his teammates, and that was quite insightful, Neil, and quite a good presentation. I'm sure we learned a lot in this room, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.